Welcome to Last in Line podcast, where we are highlighting, showcasing, and spotlighting great leaders of faith who have overcome adversity, cultivated resilience, and served others in a significant capacity. So settle in and be encouraged by this episode of Last in Line podcast. So, guys, selfishly, I am super honored today to bring you one of my favorite authors of all time. Mr. Brant Hansen has written several best-selling books. His podcast with his producer called the Brant and Sherry Oddcast has been downloaded 10 million times. He's written for people like CNN, the Washington Post, U.S. News and World Report. He is an advocate for what's called Cure International, which provides life-changing surgeries for children with treatable conditions. He's written books that you may have heard of, like Unoffendable, Blessed Are the Misfits, The Men We Need. We're going to talk a lot about that one today. He speaks to churches. He speaks to groups and conferences. I'm honored to have him. He's got 2 grown children, been married more than 30 years. He's a unique individual, guys, and I am super in awe of his writing style. I admire very much his perspective, his humility. He's very candid about masculinity and about how on paper he may not look like the most qualified person to talk about masculinity, but he is, because he has a biblical worldview and he's got a very mature, grounded perspective on what real masculinity is, what the imposters will try to tell you it is. And we get into some of that. We get into some parenting. We get into a little therapy session at the end, hopefully. And he's a remarkable guy. I really feel like I've known him for years, just through email correspondence and reading his books. I can really relate to how he breaks things down. He's been, I'll just give you an idea. He was the president of the Illinois Student Library Association. He plays the flute. He was the president of his own stamp collectors club, which I don't even know if that might be a joke, but it's pretty hysterical. He is actually diagnosed with Asperger's disease or Asperger's syndrome. He has what's called nystagmus, which causes his eyes to kind of shake and his head to move involuntarily. And these are all on his website, so I'm not revealing things that he would not want me to reveal. But he is a self-proclaimed skeptic. But if you listen to him, you see the hope he has in his heart for people, for men. You see the desire and the burden he carries to empower men and to serve. So, guys, I could go on, but I'm going to let him do the talking. So help me welcome to the stage at Last in Line podcast, Mr. Brant Hansen. Brant Hansen, it's an honor, man. Welcome to Last in Line podcast.
Thank you. Honor for me.
Shoot, man, slowly becoming, if not already, one of my favorite authors out there. I don't know how long you've been doing it, but I've been under a rock apparently, and stumbled across a friend of mine told me to read Unoffendable, and I don't know if I should have taken that offense to that or not, but he recommended that we both read it, and so I did, and it changed my life. So I'm sure it's not the first time you've heard that, but no, to the risk of being a fanboy on this call, on this talk, man, I am honored to have you.
Well, that means a lot. Whenever you write a book, honestly, it's not because you're an expert. It's because you're just spending a lot of time thinking about something. And even in the writing of the book, it challenges yourself. Like, you just spend so much time thinking about it and having to practice it. And especially with something like this, when you're talking about anger and forgiveness, and like, if I didn't try to practice this, I would be called out by everybody in my life. Like, oh, you wrote this book. What's the deal? Yeah. Including my wife, or anybody else who knows me. But I can't. It's been really good for me too. It's like, I don't own this truth. I did write a book about it, but I don't own it. And the way of Jesus is just so freeing. It changes everything for all of us. So I'm on that journey too, I guess is what I'm saying.
Yeah, and no better self accountability tool than to put something in writing that you have to live up to. I mean, I mean, I'm guessing podcasts would fit into that same category because someone can just play me right back to me if I get out of line.
That's true. It's funny. It's so ironic. Like a year or two after I wrote that book, a pastor in Dallas came out with a book about anger, and it's called Unoffendable. And I was like, wow, man, that's a little awkward. And I tweeted at him, like, that's a little awkward. And he didn't respond. And I almost tweeted something like, what are you doing? And then I thought, how hilarious would it be if the two guys who wrote a book called Unoffendable got in a big argument on Twitter?
The irony, yeah, the irony. But no, I can imagine you might have had a couple other thoughts than what we want to verbalize here. But no, I could see that would definitely be a trigger if that would have happened to me. But
It's okay though. I mean, literally, the thing about this practicing this forgiveness thing, and he doesn't need to be forgiven. He's fine. Like that's
yeah,
fine. I thought it was funny, but it's like the practicing of it, you get better at it, and it becomes a more natural first response. Like any practice, the practice in free throws, like you do it over and over so that when it matters, you don't have to think about it. Just it's a natural thing. So forgiveness or a lot of disciplines when it comes to following Jesus, I think are the same way.
yeah,
So all
yeah.
good.
The umbrella of grace, I could get a lot more muscle memory under my belt on because there's a lot that fall under that category. You guys in your radio show, and we're gonna get to some of the parts of Unoffendable that I really appreciated the most, and then we're gonna dig into the most recency bias that I just finished, The Men We Need, and I've got quite a bit to talk about that because that one again another good one. But your radio show, I mean, you guys have been doing this. I mean, you're clicking along at almost 1,800 episodes on the podcast and north of 10 million downloads, I'm guessing at this point. Are we having fun yet?
Yeah, well, we're over 15 million downloads, but we've got so many episodes. If you average it out, I think it's only like 2 listeners per episode, so it's all right. No, I'm kidding. It's very fun and it's an honor. I get to work with Sherry. She's a genius and just and she's such a sister in terms of wanting the same things for the people who listen. Like we're in sync on that stuff. Like
Yeah.
wanting to be a blessing to the people who listen and also want to laugh at stuff. So that's been really fun.
Yeah. Yeah. And I know she wrote, I think, the forward in the Men We Need book. And I can't think of a better compliment than what she was saying about you and your family and just watching the way they look at you, kind of in a nutshell encapsulates all of what a man should be shooting for. And it's so in marriage, I mean, I didn't really plan to ask this, but if we're talking about that real quick and parenting, you've got two grown kids, right? And man, what took you the longest to get right in marriage or parenting or both?
Gosh. So a guy told me when I was in college, he got married and after he graduated and he came back for something and I was like, "Hey Eric, how's it going? How's married life?" And I was looking for more of a haha, it's really fun. And he was like, "Dude, you do not realize how selfish you are until you get married."
Mm.
And I remember that. So when I got married, and then I discovered like that is really true. But then that happened all over again when we had kids. And I think it's that constant. I probably have a better answer if I thought about it for a while, but honestly, the ongoing denominator of life has been okay, it's not about me. Like trying to salvage me time, my hobbies, and it's like, no, I think I'll just give it all over. And then whatever happens that's fun, or if I get some free time, that's a bonus. And
Yeah.
I think making that jump really helped. You just become reconciled to the fact that I am married, I have kids, I can't be doing everything all the time, and there's a real joy in that actually. That when you just reconcile yourself to it. So I hope that's an
Yeah.
okay.
That's good, man. I mean, that I don't know who would be able to argue with that because it gets less and less about you the more people you start adding to the four walls of your home, and then your sphere of influence with direct, either close family or wife and kids for sure. It's just you gotta take the blinders off, and your peripherals got to get real good. And I, I would say I want to ask, because I want to do this the way I want to kind of line this out is maybe a little dessert before dinner here on a couple of questions. I want to maybe cast a vision with the end in mind here and get your take on something. What to you, broad brush here, but what to you is a win for somebody walking away from this conversation we're about to have? Like, what are you hoping would be a win for somebody to take from listening to a podcast with Brant Hansen?
Well, I mean, it depends on what we're talking about, but I will say if somebody walks away feeling like, how about this? You feel less pressure to have a big picture, that you like become this important, significant person in a cultural vision. Like if you have less pressure for that, and instead realize that God is looking for a daily partner, like that we're honored to be able to partner with God. He's always been looking for partners, and we can do that. We can be loyal. We can keep showing up. And so often a lot of Christian stuff, I think, leaves people feeling less equipped or less confident or not good enough. And I love that everybody gets to get invited to this party. You don't have to fit into this ideal of anything. But each day you just keep showing up, and then you see what God does with that. Like he's the visionary. He's got the path for you. So that's what I've really been learning about and emphasizing with people is like, just take today, like ask God for the resources for today that you need, like your daily bread, but today's resources. So I wake up and I take the dog for a walk and I ask God, please give me content for the show. I'm an introvert, so I pray for energy. Please give me creativity for today. And I'm not going to worry about tomorrow. And the weird thing has been God's done stuff with my platform or whatever. I'm not trying to do it. I'm not bashing my way into anything, but it's weird how he's made it a way for me. And I'm just trying to be faithful with whatever he brings across my plate today, whoever he brings across my sphere today, and honor that.
Yeah.
So I think that is a win. Like, because what happens is you wind up praying more, because you're praying each day, like, God, what are you and I doing together today? And here's what I need. And here's like, we're partnering together in life for his kingdom. And I think pretty much any guy can relate to that. And it takes a lot of pressure off. And then you get to see what God does with that. And that's a big win.
That's good. Yeah, no, it is. And I mean, do you think sometimes we get so aspirational that we lose sight of how valuable some of the granular vision could be, or the day-to-day, like you were saying?
Yeah, and I think part of that's our culture. It's also Christian culture. It's like big visionaries and leaders of the leader. Well, okay, not a whole lot about leadership in the Bible. A whole lot about following. There's a whole lot, and there's a whole lot about you ask God all sorts of scriptures, like about him guiding us on his path or making a path for us, like over and over and over, like Psalm 143:8, I think it is. It caused me to hear your loving kindness in the morning, for in thee do I trust. Cause me to know the ways wherein I should walk, for I lift up my soul unto you. I just memorized that, so I'm showing off. But it's like there's so many scriptures about him making the path. So if you stop thinking, I've got to be the big visionary, and you just start being faithful with what's in front of you, you can be content. And in my experience, like weirdly, God's opened up a ton of different avenues that have been wonderful. And I didn't make it happen.
Yeah.
I didn't do that.
Yeah.
So I do think that's a really wonderful way to live. And I think it's actually the way that Jesus showed us how to live. Like he's in the day of each day. He's responding in real time to people. And I really like that lifestyle.
Yeah. If we could live by the Matthew 6:33, where it's seek first the kingdom and righteousness, and then all things will be added. Right. I mean, but in a world of social media and sensationalism, we haven't really allowed ourselves the freedom to be that, I guess, in the moment, right? Or that kind of in the day.
We all feel this pressure because we're supposed to build this huge platform or something, whatever field you're in. And that's a whole lot of pressure. And I remember hearing, I think it was Dallas Willard who said years ago, I heard him say, I never prayed for a platform. I prayed for things to say.
Mm.
And he winds up being this amazing author and philosophy professor and thinker who's had so much influence on people.
Yeah.
Like, so that's been my thing too. Actually ask God, like, I don't need the platform, but please give me the things I need to say for today.
Mm-hmm.
And the wild thing has been my platform has exploded.
Yeah.
And I seriously don't need it. Like, I'm not chafing for it. But see, if that happens, you can credit God with it. It wasn't my big plan. And
Yeah.
that's
I
right.
was
So it's,
just,
yeah, go
yeah.
ahead.
Oh, sorry. I just say, especially for just kind of, I hate to say ordinary average dudes, but I mean, what better to glorify God in areas where he does extraordinary in the ordinary kind of
Yeah,
situation.
right. And let him take care of that stuff.
Yeah.
Like, you feel this, especially because I'm in media. There's a lot of needy people in media. And I just like, I don't want to be one. I want to be one of those guys as I grow older that can be about other people and can listen.
Yeah.
Because it's really weird to see guys my age and up um, who are still needy. Like that.
We're definitely going to get into that topic because I know you bring that up in your book the one I just finished not too long ago. Man, you bring up so many things that are just going to turn my outline just on its head. I want to just flow in this. But I had this question kind of laser focused into dads, but it could even go to kind of the Big C church and just kind of Christians in general. 10 years from now, if we're sitting around a coffee house and we're talking about things we kind of wish we'd have done better, looking back, like what's going to be maybe a regret or two that dads either today of our generation are going to have to say, or maybe even Christians, believers, like we're holding on so tight, right? And we're so like I said earlier, almost aspirational to a fault. I mean, what in 10 years are we going to look back and go, I wish we'd have done this a little differently?
Well, for dads, I mean, one of the things I talk about in the book, like, or for guys who think they'll be dads someday, like, I honestly, right now, I would say in our culture, uh, we should have sheltered our kids better. And I know that's a terribly unpopular thing to say because it's like, you shelter your kids. Like, we think about that going haywire and how
Yeah.
awful. But most of the time, it doesn't work that way. Most of the time, the kids aren't sheltered enough. And I love I think it was Phil Elmore, somebody asked, when should my kids get a smartphone?
Mm-hmm.
And his answer was, as soon as you want their childhood to be over. And I
Ouch.
think that's true. And I see it with friends, neighbors, and where they think, well, we're doing a pretty good job here. The kids are pretty good, and they are, but the culture's got its hooks in them. And this culture
Yeah.
is so toxic and awful.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
so bad. And it's like it's so polluted and kids are so vulnerable, and teenagers are so vulnerable. I do think you might look back and go, why didn't I protect them more from the culture? Um,
Yeah.
I know it can be taken too far where you go off the grid and the kids don't get any friends. But that's an extreme. Like, keeping them off smartphones, not letting them have unfettered access to the internet, like that stuff is just, to me, like, you got to do it.
You're right. And I don't think anybody on this podcast would confuse what you said by saying we never let them scrape their knee or go outside. I think we get that you're talking
Right.
about some of the intangible pollution that's out there it's not intangible, but it's electronic. And there's just a narrative after a narrative that they sort of keep having to choke down on a daily basis. And it's so fluid that they just don't know whether they're coming or going half the time and who they're trying to
Yeah.
impress.
And I'm not, my goal, see, it was funny too. I'm not trying to do a victory lap, but I did learn, I did do some things right and all the things I did wrong. And that was, I spent a ton of time with my kids when they were growing up, tons. So they're both in their 20s. And I really like who they are.
Mhm.
and they both have a very real faith as well, and they're both very smart. But I had friends that were like, "You're sheltering your kids. You don't let them watch that movie just because it's rated R or whatever. You don't let them." Like, no, I don't. I mean,
Mhm.
you're shut. Well, okay, but when my kids were 18, they were able to go. One moved to Manhattan, and the other went to Berkeley in California.
Oh,
Faith intact. I was never wanting them to not see the world. In fact, I took them to Peru and Costa Rica and Uganda and Ethiopia and Thailand. Like, I took them all over the place. But I wanted to be the arbiter of how they thought, ultimately, the shaper. I wanted us, my wife and I, not their peers.
yeah.
So, but now, our son is at Yale. He's in med school. He was an intel officer in the military, went back to Afghanistan and got his degree in linguistics and Russian lit at Berkeley and studied in Russia. And like, our daughter was in Manhattan for 4 years, like, tending for herself and going to school. Like, my goal was never to keep them from being in the world. I just wanted to be equipped. And childhood is not the time to unleash them on the world. So I
Yeah.
see I see a lot of guys making that mistake because the cultural pull is so strong. They feel like if I don't think they're taking it seriously enough. That's it, I guess.
Yeah,
Sorry.
yeah, and to your point of they're not quite to the maturity level to make certain decisions. I mean, we could even open up a can of worms as far as to selecting their own gender could
Of
fall into that
course.
bucket, right? And I
Right.
mean, we have derailed. Yeah,
Right. Foolishness is bound up in the heart of a child. That's not saying these kids are all a bunch of idiots. No, no, no. We love that they're precious, they're vulnerable,
yeah,
but no,
ignorance.
we
Yeah.
we gradually want to shape their character. That's my job. And it's not
Hmm.
my job was not to equip them for the workplace. My job as a dad is not to get them the best possible education so that they wound up getting great education. It wasn't because of me. My wife taught them and we took them, but
Hmm.
it wasn't. I don't care if they flip burgers. I don't
Yeah.
care about their character.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's what makes me sad is seeing a lot of people like, we got them in the first rate education. Yeah, but now you don't know them. And now they're a different person.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it just got its claws in them. And it's tragic.
Yeah, and we homeschooled our first two. I have four. Two oldest went to public schools, and I mean it was okay. It was is what it was, and for the time in
Yeah.
our season of life, and but we
Yeah.
learned a lot, and then homeschooled our two others for my wife's been doing that for I don't know 7 almost 8 years now, and we've heard the same line from our parents who clearly the boomers
Right.
didn't conceive of that concept. But yeah, you're going to make them weird. They're not going to be socialized. My two
Yeah.
younger ones are more social than my two older ones ever thought about, and they were social. So it's just crazy. It's all about what you choose. If you can find anything you're looking for, and yeah, I believe in the sheltering, and that's what another thing we had heard. Well, they're going to just have shell shock when they go out into the world if you're buffering them and you've got them in this bubble. No, because by then, to your point, their character's established and they have this moral compass built in now that they can distinguish and make discerning decisions.
Yeah. And it's no guarantee of
Right.
they're going to be strong believers the rest of their lives. Yeah. We don't control them,
That's right.
but I do get to be their dad once at home. And I wasn't
Yeah.
going to blow that. I was not going to blow that time. I wasn't going to be distracted. I wasn't going to.
Yeah.
So again, all the dumb stuff I did, um, but that was good. That was
Yeah.
good. I traded in high, like I didn't make any money at all. We had no money, but we scraped by and now we're fine. And I'm so glad I had all that time with the kids. I wouldn't trade it for anything. That was my one shot.
That's so good, man. I mean that's for somebody that maybe they're doing it right, but maybe they have a little bit of a skewed
Sure.
perspective on what their goals are, and I think you even talk about aspire and have desire and pursue things that are worthwhile, right? Long term, eternal, those things that you're talking about.
Yes.
Don't
So
want to.
I'm
Yeah, go
saying
ahead.
you should be ambitious for the
Yeah,
right things. It's good to be ambitious, but like there's a seasonal thing to life. So what I'm trying to tell guys too is like before you get the $70,000 truck that would stretch you, there's nothing wrong with a nice truck. That's great. It may not be truck season though. If you got little kids in the house and the stuff you're buying obligates you to be under pressure even when you're at home,
mm-hmm.
or under pressure and having to work extra hours. Like, it's not truck season. Wait on the truck, drive a jalopy or whatever, like drive an old 92 Ford Ranger, whatever. You're not James Bond. It's okay. You don't have to have the nicest thing.
Right.
But this kid season will end.
Right.
And then you'll have time for whatever. And maybe the budget space. But right now it's little kid season.
Yeah, be the minivan guy for a little while. There's something to that.
Yes, totally. So what? Like, but the culture is so strong. So even if you're doing the right thing, to wit, like what you were saying, even if you're a guy who is making good, wise decisions, in the back of your mind, you could be like, man, should I have gone for that promotion? Should I have transferred, gone for that 16-hour job? Like, it's good to hear voices go, no, you're making the right call.
Yeah.
It's kids.
That's good. Well, people are, maybe 20 or so minutes into this and they're going, if they didn't listen to my intro previously recorded, they're going, who in the world is this guy? And the ones that haven't read your books, but okay. So you've called yourself, maybe on paper, if we're reading your profile sheet and we're, looking at the traditional definition of what culture says, and these are your words too, this is the epitome of masculinity right here. Now, you tell us about yourself and why you've said those things that maybe you don't fit that particular cookie cutter definition.
Yeah, because I think even in church culture, we have this idea about what manhood is. And it's like, but we don't say it very well. And so when we're like, okay, guys are going to get together, we're going to have steaks and we're going to, throw some axes and we're going to do stuff. Okay, that's cool. But is that really masculinity? What is it? If we can't say what it is specifically and distinctly, because people will say, well, being a masculine person means being kind. Okay, that's true, but that's true for women as well. What's the nubbin of masculinity? And it can't be hunting, fishing, and being jacked and having a big truck. It can't be.
Hey, before we get back to the conversation here with our guest, I want to thank one of our sponsors, a new partner, Uncommon, which is a ministry that is equipping and empowering great men to become the husbands, the fathers, and leaders they were called to be. Go to uncommon.org. That's UNCOMMEN.org. Check out their content. Go to YouVersion, download their devotionals. Great team, great people, great men, and they're out there for you. They're out there with great content, and they're out there to encourage us to be the men we were called to be. So I want to thank TJ and his team at Uncommon. So now let's get back to the conversation with our great guest here at Last in Line Podcast.
Like, because there's a lot of us that don't count for that. Right. But I have the respect, thankfully, of my wife, who thinks I'm very masculine. I play the flute. I play the accordion. I'm not making this up. Those are like, I am the former president of the Illinois Student Librarians Association. Like, I am a nerd. I can't do axe throwing night. I was literally invited not long ago because I was speaking at a thing, and I was like, I have a neurological problem. I can't see straight. I'm very dizzy. You do not want me throwing axes at your men's.
Yeah. Hey, when you say the whole accordion and librarian thing, stick your chest out a little bit, man, because that's something to be proud of, right?
Come on. Yeah. But okay, so what is it then? Because again, the church itself will make that mistake and go, we'll do a guys' weekend where we're going to do SEAL training. And there's nothing wrong with SEAL training. Nothing. Right. Nothing wrong with it. But there's something deeper. So that's what I was trying to say with the book. Like, all of us can access the thing that we're supposed to be. And I believe that's what Adam was charged with doing, which is being a keeper of the garden. Mm-hmm. Someone who protects and cultivates the lives of the vulnerable around us. So I'm all of these nerd things, but you know what? I got words. I can bring my nerdiness to bear if necessary, but like, I use it for different things in my life to bring security to people. Mm-hmm. Everybody can do that with whatever you do. So I love that because it gives access to people who are, accounting professors or IT guys, or maybe they're more into gaming than they are into hunting or
Right.
Texas Hold'em or something. But it's like, they can still be more masculine than a guy who's jacked with a big truck who doesn't take responsibility for the vulnerable.
Yeah. And whose wife is, doubting how stable he's going to be tonight, or,
Totally.
who's going to trigger him today, or yeah.
Totally. And to that point, what I try to say in the book is like those trappings of masculinity, like being really ripped or whatever, that's great. Your wife will be attracted to that, or woman, at first, because she'll think that maybe that bodes well, that you're a protector and you're somebody who will be the man that she hopes you are. But if you actually aren't that guy, if you flirt with other women, or you are all into your body, or you don't make her feel secure, you make her feel insecure, she'll actually resent your muscles.
Mm-hmm.
She's going to resent all of that. She's not going to be attracted to you. She's going to be repulsed by your awesome abs. If you're just doing that because you're a irresponsible boy who likes to flirt with other women. Conversely, the great news is you don't have to be all of that. And your wife can be wildly attracted to you because you bring security to the home. She's secure with you. She knows that you'll respond if you're needed. And beyond that, you'll just provide the security on a day-to-day basis. She never has to wonder where your heart is, or you've got this gentleness to you in addition to who you are. Like,
Yeah.
you'll be attracted to you. You don't have to be ripped at all. Isn't that great?
Yeah. Yeah. It's free. It's freeing. And I mean, this is from a person who, I lift weights, but look, I'm 50 years old. I've been married for 28 years. I'm doing it in the garage. Like, I'm not doing it for any reason other than I just want to be able to lift something without hurting for a week, carry a box without hurting for a week. That's one of the main reasons. And, but I will say, let me ask you this, and this is way further down on the outline, but so what? I guess we're just going to torch this whole outline. But when it comes to that, and we talk about, how what you just said about the world has said, the more you can lift and the higher jacked up your truck is, the more of a bulge you have in your pants, and then the more women want you and you're more masculine. Well, talk to me about the security. To your security point, does a woman feel more secure when a man seems like he's more, I guess, capable physically, or as a protector because is a little stouter than maybe the next guy? Where do we get the lines? Are really blurred right there. And so
at first, it bodes well. So these things are outside signifiers that a woman, especially a younger one who's not as wise, maybe will think, yeah, that's what I'm looking for. And they may not even think it consciously. But I do this thing, and I outlined it in the book. I explained, I just did it the other day. I show these slides to crowds of people, and they're just regular guys doing stuff like one I was like pulling a goat out of a flood. Two younger guys doing this. One's a bigger guy pulling somebody out of a car after an accident. There's somebody flying a helicopter, taking somebody away from a hurricane. Like, there's all that stuff. I'll show these slides, and at the end I'm like, hey ladies, just curious, are these guys attractive? And the visceral unified yes is palpable to the men in the room. It's just, yes. Well, I go back through the slides. None of these guys are models. These are actual guys. Some of them are overweight. They're all different ages, different ethnicities. Like, they're just guys. Some are just blurry. You can't even see them. And women are like, oh, they're so attractive. It's just about who you are.
Yeah.
So that initial signifier, let's say you're a big guy, you're stout. Well, if you make your wife feel secure, that's going to be attractive.
Yeah.
If your size actually contributes to her feeling less secure,
yeah,
she wants to get away.
Yeah.
She dreams at night about it.
Yeah.
So it's all about that. This keeper of the garden thing, women recognize when we're doing it and they're drawn to it. For my wife, she just wants me to be willing. She wants me to show a willingness to do what needs to be done. So when she sees that, she's wildly attracted. And if she suspects that I'm not willing to step up and be somebody who provides security, well, then we got a problem. So
yeah. You mentioned something in the book, and I can't think of the exact specifics, but she mentioned that she could tell you actually cared about something that was kind of outside your wheelhouse, and you
Yeah,
weren't
yeah,
really
yeah.
thrilled, but
Yeah.
you
So
actually had interest in making her life better and serving her. And she's like, yes, that's
yeah.
it. Yeah.
You know what too? Like that was an incident that happened outside our house. There's some ruckus going on at like 11 o'clock. I just want to stay in bed. Like, who cares? And she's nervous. So I finally got up, and joined her downstairs, put on my clothes, and I went out the door to confront these people, a bunch of teenage guys or college guys out front. And went outside and they dispersed. And I turned around and came back inside. I don't even think they left because of me. I think they were already just dispersing.
And you just yelled out there, take that and don't come
Yeah,
back. One of
I
those
should
kind
have.
of
I came back in and my wife's like, wow, that was really great of you. I was like, oh no, she said that was really hot, is what she said. And I laughed and I said, I didn't even do anything. Like I didn't have to say anything. They were just leaving. She's like, yeah, but you were willing to. Like, that's so interesting. And then the other thing that happens down here, I don't think I wrote about this in the book, but we live in South Florida, and a phenomenon happened. We had 3 hurricanes one year, several years back. Like we got direct hit 3 times
Mhm.
years ago. I was on the radio here locally at the time. And my wife told me it was really attractive to her when I was putting up the shutters. So I thought, well, that's interesting. And I mentioned that on the air, and I had all these women calling in saying, oh my goodness, it is so attractive. My husband putting the shutters up. Doesn't matter if he's good looking or not, but he's putting shutters up to protect the family.
So instead of the fireman calendar, we just need some guys during hurricane season putting shelter up on the window.
Yeah. I mean, seriously, it doesn't matter. Like all this stuff that we think defines it, that's so part of what they're looking for from us for. And it's really important if you're listening to this and you're thinking, okay, well, I'll defend the house against hurricane or intruders. Like one guy made a great point. I did put this in the book. The first person you need to defend your house against is you,
Wow.
because it's your sarcasm or barbs or lack of talking to your wife.
Yeah.
It can make people real insecure real fast.
Yeah. Passivity is almost as toxic as being triggered all the time.
100%. 100%. Because it's the same thing basically, because it makes them feel insecure.
Mm-hmm.
Like
Mm-hmm.
maybe again, a guy who's sarcastic with his wife or puts her down in any subtle way, like you're now the intruder she needs defended against.
Yeah. That's
So
crazy. I mean, when you put it that way, it's a little bit sobering.
yeah, man, to me too. So I want to watch all of that. I'm
Yeah.
trying, because it just takes a little bit and people feel it because it's such a high stakes relationship.
Yeah. Well, so as we kind of continue to peel back the layers here on Brant Hansen, so you grew up in a Christian house. I mean, you knew who God was. I don't get the feeling it was like the best environment always. So maybe give us a little bit of a taste of what that through your eyes as a child was, and kind of the taste it put in your mouth about Christianity. And then when did you kind of have that defining faith moment where you're like, this is mine. I'm going to own this, and this is real.
Um, my dad was a pastor, and our home was very scary. Me and my brother grew up with a lot of fear, and there's a lot of hypocrisy,
Mm.
say the least. So my parents ultimately got divorced when I was maybe 7th grade, and then remarried to each other, and then divorced again.
Mm.
We switched churches like every year. But my dad, I mean, we had lots of sermons to listen to, but I didn't want to go home because I was afraid for our lives, basically. So it made me very skeptical. Uh, so skeptical, in fact, that I believe I'm a Christian in large part because I'm so skeptical. Like, I'm not just skeptical of Christian claims, I'm skeptical of all the claims.
Mm-hmm.
So I can go, and I literally did in my head, like in high school and college, like, okay, if I leave this Jesus thing behind, where do I go? And I found the alternatives to be lacking,
Mm-hmm.
to put it mildly. And I'm also really drawn to Jesus himself. So I didn't have one pivotal moment where like, well, now I'm a Christian per se. I mean, I decided when I was 12, I wanted to be a Christian, but
Mm-hmm.
this is an ongoing, deepening actual partnership with God where I trust him more and more.
Yeah.
But that's, man, you go through something like that. It was kind of a prescription for a bitter atheist, but I honestly think I was so skeptical, I got chased around. But no one else, like, there's no other worldview that acknowledges sin and then does something about it.
Wow. Yeah.
Most worldviews don't even acknowledge it. They come up with other euphemisms or things to try to pretend we don't really have a problem. Or if they do, there's no solution for it. And
Yeah.
Jesus is the one who makes the most sense to me. So yeah, that's my background.
Yeah. Sounds like a similar path to Lee Strobel and The Case for Christ. You probably saw that movie where he's going through this journey to disprove it all, and
Yeah.
ends up stumbling right into why it makes sense, and it is the way.
Yeah, and look, human nature, everything about human nature that I observe jibes with what Jesus was saying about us. We are inveterately like self-righteous to the core. And we know this from cognitive science now. Like the people who win Nobel Prizes in cognitive science are affirming what Jesus said about we just are so self-delusional about our moral goodness. It's unbelievable. And it's rare for somebody to humble themselves and repent, rethink. I mean, it just totally jives with what Jesus was saying. And so when you see human nature up close, I wanted, like, if somebody's telling me there's no such thing as sin in the world, I'm like, oh, come on. Come on, look around. Like,
Yeah.
no, this is messed up, right? You can call it whatever you want, but we all know we're fundamentally broken, and no one else has a solution like Jesus does.
Yeah. You could literally be clinically blind and still know that that's not true.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Right. There's more evidence for that than just about anything else, like empirically, that we are messed up and selfish by nature. I mean, come on.
Yeah. So, I mean, I guess as we your journey and transition through, I mean, I guess early adulthood, and you mentioned early on when you had kids, you guys didn't have a ton of, surplus, I guess. When did you realize that there was a real vacancy and deficiency in this area of true masculinity, truly what men need to be? And I guess, how did you come up with the fact that you were the guy to be a credible source to tell us all this?
Well, that's why I had Sherry write the foreword, because she was saying it's kind of the very fact that I'm not that guy that can climb. I can't walk across a log on a stream because I'll fall off. Like, I have no bound. I go on all fours, like across. Like, I'm not that guy.
But what's wrong with that? I didn't know that was a problem.
So I don't feel qualified, to be honest. But I'm amazed how God uses us anyway. And I think the very fact that I'm not that guy helps, because everybody's tweets or posts like, men need to man up. We need to, come on, man up. Okay, that's fine. That's true. But what do you mean when you say man up? What are you talking about? So if somebody doesn't come along and distinctively say, this is what masculinity really is at its core, we don't have a vision for how we're supposed to be. Yeah. So you see, guys, I can observe this. I'm an observer, my nature. I'm observing guys not knowing what masculinity actually is and then trying to figure it out. Yeah. But you can't, unless you have a better vision for life, you'll fall for all sorts of things. Well, I was on Focus on the Family recently, and I love those guys. Like Jim Daly was saying, he was talking about pornography and how awful it is that so many guys are using porn. I'm like, I totally agree, but if you don't have a bigger vision for life, you just fall into any kind of trap, because you'll fall for lesser loves, for fake loves, because you don't. If we're not laying out for guys, like, here's what you're actually called to be and do. Yeah. Well, it's just saying man up doesn't do it. So I felt the need for this book to say, okay, let me take a shot at actually giving you a vision for what masculinity really is. And it's an equal opportunity one for any guy, whether he, hunts with a bow or plays accordion, either one, it applies to all of us.
And the irony would have been if you'd had the book cover be in camouflage. That would have been kind of cool.
Well, it's funny you say that, because my publisher was like, okay, do you want like a guy, like a silhouette of a guy climbing a mountain? I'm like, no, no, don't do that. Like it's
Yeah.
not, it's,
Yeah.
this is different. This is about literally the men our culture needs us to be,
Yeah.
regardless of whether we can do outdoorsy stuff or not.
Yeah. And kind of you and I mean, I'm a lot more alike. I think we are than I realized, but, I've heard people say, he doesn't call the equip, he equips the called. So he doesn't necessarily, he's not looking for somebody's resume to be spotless to use
Right.
them, like you were saying.
Right. And it's in our weakness that people can give him credit. Like if I'm awesome, if I write a book and it's like, look at what I did, and then I this, and then I scored 74 touchdowns as a running back, and then I
Yeah.
became, special forces, and
Yeah.
well, then people walk away going, wow, that guy's really impressive.
I can never be that. Yeah.
Or just, wow, that guy's great.
Yeah. Yeah.
But if you write a book about like your own weaknesses or like like who you really are, and you talk about God's mission for other people, people can walk away going, man, God's really awesome.
Yeah. I want to be
Instead,
the guy. I want to be the guy that they look at and go, man, if he can do it, I can do it.
yeah, totally. Why not?
Yeah.
Paul wrote about that when he's talking about the thorn in his flesh. He said it's good for him because it keeps him humble,
Wow.
and humility is where God comes through. So
Yeah.
I don't want people walking away going, wow, that guy's really amazing. I want them to walk away going, wow, God's really amazing. Look what he can do with my life too.
100%. 100%. All right. So I got to get your commitment. I'm in sales, so I'm going to kind of do a presumptive soft close here and ask that maybe there's an opportunity to bring you back at some point, because we may not get to everything, and there's so much that, I mean, I just enjoy this.
Totally.
And so but as we kind of navigate and transition into The Men We Need, the book, that I most recently, I read Unoffendable last year in no time, because I felt like I was, if you could be looking in a mirror that was a book, that was what I was doing. So I just couldn't put it down, because I just love reading about myself. And it resonated, and I'm sure it did with you. Like you said, God's ministering to you with some of the things he's working on most through the word. And that's what I do on this podcast when I'm talking. It's like, yeah, this is for me, guys. I mean, if there's nobody listening, this is what I needed to hear. But, so yeah, I felt like I was getting triggered a lot, and I felt like I was in a place of just constant angst, almost like just this uneasiness in my spirit, just waiting to be pissed off,
Yeah.
and because of looking around and just the world and where we are. And I feel like I'm not like the only person in that state. So give me just, if we touch on Unoffendable real quick, what correlation do you make between insecurity and irritability?
Well, insecurity and it's very difficult to be thankful when you're insecure.
Mm-hmm.
And gratitude is everything.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think you can be grateful and angry at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
Like you have to choose one mindset or the other.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing is, if you're insecure, I don't think you really understood what God's done for you, or at least you're not currently internalizing it.
Mm-hmm.
Like what God has done for us is so remarkable. This whole Calvary thing. Like if I believe that he actually did that for me, that I'm part of that, I have so much to be thankful for. It's very difficult for me to
Mm-hmm.
turn around, be simultaneously in awe of God's amazing forgiveness of me. Very difficult to be simultaneously in awe of that and also mad at the guy who just cut me off.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So I think it's one or the other. Like you choose one or the other. And if you're constantly bringing to mind, you're paying attention to the fact that God has been so good to you, that's what gives you the resource to change. That's
Yeah.
it. If you don't have that, I don't know how you change. So I read articles all the time about our anger epidemic in our culture, and it's amazing how they have no answers for it. Ultimately, they're like, go for a walk, you should do some yoga, maybe do some deep breathing exercises. Like they never mention forgiveness.
Mm.
So like Jesus' way of living is a better way of living. It's a freeing way of living, and it's a lifestyle of forgiveness. This is our lifestyle together in
Mm-hmm.
light of the fact that we've been forgiven.
Mm-hmm.
So I have to remind myself, and this is how the rubber hits the road. Every morning, I'm going to forgive people in advance, not because they deserve it, They don't deserve it. I forgive them because I didn't deserve it.
Mm-hmm.
That's why we do this. So
Yeah.
this is a discipline, and it gets easier over time. It becomes just your default way of responding, so that you become that older guy that someone cuts him off and he doesn't take it personally, or
Mm-hmm.
he's not threatened. Like you're saying, the insecurity thing plays into anger too, because anger is often, almost always, a response to threat. And
Right.
if you're constantly being threatened, it means you're very insecure.
Yeah. Yeah, because you're always needing to kind of one up the next guy to feel better about your situation. And so that's
Yeah.
why I think I put those two together. I was thinking, I mean, if I'm going to be transparent, I think I had some pockets of insecurity I had to deal with
Oh,
in myself because I was
normal.
so easily frustrated with different things. And I'm like, there's something wrong with this.
Me too. I think a lot of that is, for me anyway, it's the chafing or need for significance.
Yeah.
And so it always, everybody becomes a threat when I'm chafing or I need significance. Everybody
Okay.
wants, it bothers me that some other guy got attention or somebody like, but once you surrender that, we're just like, Lord, enough with me chafing for stuff. Like, let me just forgive people because you have, and take on today's stuff. And then
Yeah.
watch, like, then you're in a much better place where you're not going to be as quickly angry with people, because you're just, there's not much to threaten. I gave it all away, right? Like, even my life, I say I've given to Christ. Like, what can you threaten, really?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I'm not very easily angered if I'm not easily threatened.
Yeah, no, that's good. I mean, that helps. And that's kind of what that book was, just kind of like I mean, it wasn't that I didn't conceptually get some of what you were talking about before I read the book, but it was just like, I don't know, seasons, right? God meets you with
Yeah.
certain resources in the moments you need them. And you just happen to be the lucky guy that stepped
Totally.
into my world and kind of shook me a little bit. So
Well,
thank you
so
for that.
can I ask you a question?
Yeah, yeah.
When did you read that book?
Not long ago. I mean, late last year.
Okay. I'm
So
curious,
it's been
as
out a long time, I know, but
no. Well, they just re-released it in
yeah,
January.
yeah.
Um, do you feel like practicing this is helping even your mentality at home, so that you're not
Yeah, because I can tell
easygoing?
you, back to the security thing, when you're with your family and you're out in traffic, or where you're wherever the environment is that rubs you the wrongest, uh,
Hmm.
that doesn't plant seeds of security in your family when they're wondering if dad's going to lose it, right? Or if dad's going to say
Right,
something negative. And so I think I
right.
was just getting real negative. I wasn't like this short fuse violent guy. I was just very negative to point
Yeah.
out all the wrong going on. And I don't think that gave them any peace or security.
Yeah, I think that's right. And a lot of guys think anger is masculine, and it's like, no, 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 no.
Mm-mm,
Anger is not masculine.
mm-mm,
Action to defend the vulnerable, to defend,
mm-hmm.
or and again, to cultivate the people around you. Action, that's masculine.
Yeah.
Anger, nobody wants to live with an angry guy. That's scary.
No, yeah, no, I didn't. I mean, I had a dad that was a Marine, and he wasn't always angry, but you just kind of knew where that line was, that you know, the what not to do with that fuse. And so I don't want to be that guy either. But
Mhm.
yeah, so I I'm gonna I guess, concede the rest of my outline because I know you're crazy busy. I really did want to get into this Men We Need book more. I know we've touched on some of it, but maybe I'll just give one little kind of whet the audience's appetite a little bit on one thing, and then we'll bring you back tomorrow. I'm just kidding. Was there one that was there one that just kind of kicked you kind of right in the stomach more than the other six? You had six decisions that set us apart, right? As the
Yeah,
people that the men that people need us to be. Okay, the world needs us, the men, Christian men specifically, to be a certain thing. And there's six decisions we got to make. Was there
yeah,
one, and you probably know them all by heart, but let me just give them
yeah.
to the audience real quick. It's forsake the fake, relish the real. Kudos on the alliteration, by the way.
Thanks.
Protect the vulnerable, be ambitious about the right things, make women and children feel safe, not threatened. Touched on that a little. Choose today who you will become tomorrow. That one was my hot button. Take responsibility for your own spiritual life. So which one?
Okay, well, a little bit of the last two.
Yeah.
So the one point I would make from the fifth point there about
Choose
who
today.
who you're going to become tomorrow. We know who we're becoming tomorrow. It's based on what we're paying attention to right now.
Hmm.
What you pay attention to determines who you become.
That's
That
right.
is an ironclad fact. And paying attention is a great use of the language to use those terms, because attention, you pay to attend something.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody wants your attention. It's worth so much. People spend billions of dollars to try to get your attention. God wants it too. You will become more and more of a caricature of one thing or another. You could be the peaceful person who's a blessing to the people around you. You could become the angry, bitter, lonely, older person too. But it's based on what and who you are paying attention to. So I could talk about that for a while, but the biggest
Yeah.
point, like, that'll be the most life-giving, and I left it as the last one, the taking responsibility for your own spiritual life. This sounds like it could be a guilt trip, but it's not. I'm actually trying to encourage guys by saying this. In our culture is so emotion based, both the secular culture and Christian church culture. It's all about emotions. We think spirituality is emotion. So if I
Mm-hmm.
feel emotional, like by the time a chorus hits in a worship song and then it modulates up a key and gives you goosebumps, where then I'm being spiritual. That's not what spiritual is.
Mm-hmm.
This is great news for those of us who are not particularly emotional,
Yeah.
because we can think, wow, look at my wife, or look at these other people. They put their hand, like they're having a completely, I must be some kind of rock, or no, that's not spirituality. The spirituality that God is looking for is loyalty.
Mm.
It's hesed. It's this faithful, unbending, loyal belief in him. So you don't have to be emotional. You don't have to feel guilty about not being emotional. What you do is you just keep showing up. So
Mm.
you keep talking to God. Don't leave because you're not feeling it. So I show up anyway. I don't feel God around all the time or even most of the time, but that doesn't change reality. That's just my
Mm-hmm.
feelings. Our feelings can come and go based on whether we had a nap, or what we
Right.
ate, or how our team did. So that's actually a really freeing thing for guys. I want to encourage them, like, hey, you may not be feeling anything. So you know what duty means. You know what loyalty means. Guys get that. And so I'm a sinner. I know that, you know what, though? I'm not going to slink away in shame. I'm going to keep going back and talking to him anyway. I'm not giving up. And as I see the biblical stories of the characters in the Bible that were given as, like, that's who they are. They're very flawed sinners
Yeah.
who keep partnering with God.
Yeah.
So I'm just telling guys to keep showing up with your honest prayer. Keep talking to him about what you and he are doing in the world together today. And so I hope that's encouraging and not
Yeah,
just.
it is. It actually, yeah, because I mean, in those guys you're talking about in the Bible, I mean, the common thread, their heart never really shifted posture away from God, right? The loyalty component
Right.
you're talking about. So the heart is what God can work with. All the other aesthetics out there, yes, need to be kind of dialed in and leveled up in certain areas. But man, if your heart posture is right, He can work with that.
And yes, he will work with it. He'll grow us up.
Mm-hmm.
The rest of the stuff comes from that. That's the
Mm-hmm.
wellspring of everything else. All the other stuff is just trappings. Like,
Mm-hmm.
but that's what he wants. He wants you. So the other stuff can follow, and it will, but it's going to
Yeah.
follow from that. And that's going to be the thing that changes us, and then other people get to benefit from.
Yeah, I mean, that's golden. Yeah, so we're definitely going to have to harass you back onto the show.
No problem. I'd be happy to. No, absolutely. Hit me back. You got my email and
I
stuff.
got to tell you, so I have one final fun thing that we were supposed to do at the beginning, but man, it got so like organic quickly, and I just had to roll with it. So I wanted to ask you if we stumble upon a Brant Hansen time capsule 100 years from now, buried in your backyard, and we're trudging through, and or for some reason we're digging in your backyard, and there it is. Okay, give me a personal item that would be in there, something that means something to you, kind of a personal. Give me an 80s band recommendation, and then give me an author recommendation that is not Brant Hansen.
In the time capsule, probably some puppets. Because I got some of them. Also, maybe my accordion. Maybe my accordion. So that's in the time capsule. Maybe a Lord of the Rings book.
Okay.
Um, the author recommendation that's not me. I'm a huge Chesterton and C.S. Lewis fan. I've been
Mm.
thinking about Lewis's space trilogy today, and I could talk about that forever. I won't, but
Mm.
I mean that's kind of a typical answer to give. But oh, and Dallas Willard. I've learned so much from him. Was so much from Dallas Willard. He's a
Well,
yeah.
you're a little more well read, being that you were, president of the Student Librarian Association. But so that you got that. But no, I probably need to dig into Dallas Willard a little bit more, and instead of just depending on your references in all your books, I should probably get more in depth with that. No, and the other one was an '80s
Oh
band
yeah, man.
recommendation.
I could recommend it a lot. I mean, if you're not listening to Vintage U2, you're missing out, especially the
Yeah,
Forget the Fire album. So
yeah.
that's 84, 85. Obviously, Joshua Tree comes along in 86, and then Octung Baby in 89. But
Well,
I'm
Rattle and Hum got crazy, didn't it? That was really kind of where I got into the scene with
with
you
it.
too, but
Yeah, go back because like
further, yeah.
Boy in October, like 1980, 82. This is punk thing, but there's this raw Christian thing, especially on October. Like every song.
Really?
Yeah, every song, man. Check it out. Like
I would have maybe predicted you too. I would have thought you might have said you too. Yeah. Give me something no one would really expect from you though, from
oh
a
gosh.
band reference.
Oh man. How about let's see what I've been doing lately.
Not Notorious B.I.G. though. We'll edit that
No, no,
out.
no, no, no. That's good. That's good. I mean, I do respect Queen
Yeah.
musically, at least vocally.
Yeah.
So Duran Duran was
Okay.
underrated. Underrated. They were a boy band, so they were dismissed as a boy band, but those guys wrote all their songs and played all their own instruments, and they were really
Well, there you
talented.
go.
Yeah, so
There you go. Well, at least you didn't say Milli Vanilli because they didn't do any of those
they didn't do
things.
anything. So
Yeah,
yeah,
that's
I
right.
think they're properly rated.
There you go. Well, all right. Hey, I really appreciate it, man. It's been an honor. Like I said earlier, I admire everything you're doing, and I look forward to digging into the rest of your work, and maybe something coming soon, something new to the market on the bookshelves that I can dig into as well. But man, with that, he has been Brant Hansen. We have been last in line. Be blessed.